Welcome everyone to this month's Digging In with TPS-MTSU. My name is Kara Duke and I'm going to just kind of open things up for us. Again, I want to thank everyone who's joining us live and thank you guys who might be watching us later on our YouTube channel. This month we're talking about Tennessee state parks, but before we kind of jump into that, and we're really excited about the guest speakers that we have with us this month from the parks, I want to just go over a couple of things. First, let's see if I can get my... There we go. Just a few best practices. We do ask that you keep your mics muted throughout just to help us have a cleaner sound on our recording. If you've not already done so, rename yourself. So it's your first and last name that shows up on the participant list and in the chat box. And we do want this session to be interactive as always. So again, for those of you joining us live, we do encourage you to use the chat box to ask questions, to make points, anything like that that you want to add into the conversation during the course of the presentation. You also have reaction buttons, and so you can use those. You have a thumbs up and a hands clap. And we are going to have a couple of polls as well to get your feedback on a few things. So again, just kind of remember that. And again, we do want these to be interactive, so please be sure to make use of those three functions. And just a reminder also that we do have a Padlet, so all of the resources shared in today's session and all of our past Digging In sessions can be found on our Padlet, and you can use the QR code here or that link in order to access that, and we'll continue to update that each month with each new session within the Digging In series. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Stacy to tell us a little bit about our theme for this month.
Thanks, Kira. All right, I am going to share my screen. So you should be looking at our newsletter right now. I'm going to make it, okay, I tried to make it bigger. All right, there we go. That might make it a little bit easier to see. Hopefully you've already had a chance to take a look at this. We chose for our theme for this month, Tennessee State Parks. And we actually haven't done this topic before. It may seem like we have because we have done, as you can see from the important links box on page 2, not just one, but 2 newsletters on national parks, which are resources that the Library of Congress has a lot of primary sources to support. And we've also done a newsletter on Tennessee landmarks. Those are, things that may be associated with parks, maybe historic sites as well. So, but we have not done Tennessee State Parks. And we thought that this would be a great month, partly because it's the summertime and people like to go camping and hiking and things like that in the summer. Also, going to a park is a really good way to get out of your house in a time of social distancing and still have fun with your family and hopefully stay safe and healthy. So we thought, all right, well, we'll jump on that bandwagon and totally encourage that. I know I took my daughter to a park. In fact, I took her to one of the parks that we highlighted in this issue. We went to Old Stone Fort Park, which is part of the State Archaeological Parks lesson idea, also looking at pins and mounds. So also in this issue, we have done a T.O. Fuller State Park, and we highlight Reelfoot Lake State Park as well. And then of course we have additional ones on page 4. But I want to launch a poll first, if you wouldn't mind, Kira, helping me out with that. Poll number 1 on which parks you've been to. So for those of you who are watching later on our recorded version of this webinar and cannot see the polls, the question is, what parks have you visited? And the choices are Fall Creek Falls, Norris Dam, T.O. Fuller, Old Stone Fort, and Reelfoot Lake, Pinson Mounds, Fort Loudoun, and Fort Pillow. And you can enter one or all of the ones that you've been to. This is just so we can kind of get into our topic a bit more. these are ones that are going to be touched on either in the newsletter and or when we're talking about them today in the webinar. So I am not able to see how many people have already responded, but maybe you could see that, Kira. There we go. So you can see from the polling results that the most people who responded chose Fall Creek Falls, which is one of my favorites. The second place is a tie between Norris Dam and Reelfoot Lake. After that, a tie between Old Stone Fort, Pinson Mounds, and Fort Loudoun. And then Fort Pillow and T.O. Fuller is actually the one that only 13% of our respondents say that they've been to, and that's in Memphis. And I know that we've all been to Memphis. So next time you go to Memphis, squeeze in a visit to T.O. Fuller State Park. All right. And one of the reasons also, I have to say, that we think state parks is really great to use in the classroom. And of course, our partners from state parks are going to talk a lot more about this in a few minutes. But they actually do connect to your standards, particularly social studies standards, which is what we're always trying to hit. And one of the ways that they do this is by bringing in a lot of New Deal era standards. And so we actually have one more poll for you before we get into the meat of our webinar. So Kira, could you please launch the second one? And the question for this one is, which of these parks, and it's the exact same choices as before. Excuse me, that's an alarm. Which of these parks was constructed with help from the Civilian Conservation Corps as part of the New Deal? So if you wouldn't mind putting, you can answer more than one, but which of these do you think the CCC was involved in creation of part of the infrastructure of the park?
All right, so we've still got a couple people who are thinking out their responses.
This one's a bit trickier.
Okay.
And the results. Well, of course, Norris Dam. Good. Yeah, well, that one's kind of a little bit more obvious because of the New Deal connection through the TVA. But yes, Fall Creek Falls, correct. T.O. Fuller, correct. Reelfoot Lake, correct. Fort Loudoun, I just learned today, correct. Let's see, but I don't think that Fort Pillow, Pinson Mounds, or Old Stone Fort have CCC involvement. And the reason for that is because they were made into parks later in the 60s and the 70s. And these other ones were earlier in like the 30s and 40s, the heyday of CCC involvement before they disbanded in like 1942 or 43. But that'll get us in the right mindset for looking at some of the primary sources that are to come. And you can see right away, our awesome source of the month is Norris Dam. And I chose this image, and then I went to the Wikipedia page and I noticed that the thumbnail image on the Wikipedia page looks just like the one that we had picked from a collection that I'm going to show you a little bit later in the webinar. So it's like a then and now of Norris Dam, and it kind of makes sense. It's a large structure that isn't going to really change much over the years, I guess. Anyway, without further ado, I would love to turn this over to Mr. Hobart Aiken, one of our partners at Tennessee State Parks, and I'm going to let him and his crew take care of the featured portion of our webinar. I'm stopping sharing right now. So Hobart, if you're ready, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, let's see. And then there we go. All right, so yeah, guys, what I wanted to talk to y'all about today is just kind of give you a brief overview of the kind of Tennessee State Parks, who we are and kind of where we've been. And this is going to be challenging for me to keep brief because this is something I'm pretty excited about most of the time. But Tennessee State Parks is an 83-year-old organization. We were founded in 1937. This is an image from our 75th anniversary a few years ago, which was in 2012. Which Eric will remember because that was a really dark year for Eric because that was the year I came to him to work as a ranger at Fort Loudoun for a couple of years. So he'll remember that as a very dark time. But it was a pretty cool anniversary. But State Parks itself is an interesting organization. We're founded during the New Deal and kind of grow out of a series of kind of crises in kind of the natural environment inside Tennessee. Tennessee, after the Civil War, experiences rapid industrialization. Industries like logging. This is a picture of some logging out near Pickett State Park in Big South Fork. And agricultural practices, bad agricultural practices, mining, all really wreaked havoc on Tennessee's resources, really from the end of the Civil War all up through the 19 teens. In 1920, the report is from 1919, but it was published in 1920. State geologist Wilbur Nelson, who was a state official kind of looking at these issues, remarked that the forests were making their last stand against the unscientific lumbermen and that the conditions of our woodlands are a great source of regret to all. And so Tennessee had been was really kind of in a dire strait. And when the Great Depression hit, this is an image from Wilder, Tennessee, which was used widely by New Deal agencies to talk about kind of rural Tennessee and their efforts at rehabilitation of rural Tennessee and their kind of changing and modernizing of rural Tennessee. So, but by that point, it was really kind of an area that was kind of ripe for change. And Tennessee State Parks are a real good physical kind of reminder of that time. And so we share a lot in common with other New Deal agencies like TVA. As a matter of fact, TVA is a really important organization for Tennessee State Parks. One of the guys who wrote our Organic Act was a former landscape architect from TVA named Sam Brewster. And so we share a lot kind of intellectually with them. So yeah, we come from the same philosophy that built places like Norris Dam. So the same way of thinking of bringing modern power, modern industry to the valley, and also just kind of transforming Tennessee's natural environment forever. We also have a big, long history with conservation education. The Department of Conservation was founded to kind of conserve and work with Tennessee's natural resources, but also to educate the next generation in the proper and wise use of natural resources. So conservation education is something that we've done forever. And we've also been one of the big leaders in kind of public recreation in the outdoors. Tennessee State Parks is really important for the conversation around camping as a recreational activity. People camped before there were Tennessee State Parks in the 1930s. Outdoor recreation was undergoing a boom in the 1920s, but really and truly, for most folks, camping was really a difficult vacation for people to go on because there weren't many places that you could go that were like true public property. You'd normally have to like crash out into some farmer's field or have to find a municipal auto camp somewhere, and there weren't many of those. And so Tennessee State Parks is really part of an effort to give, kind of your working class family and your everyday worker access to outdoor recreation in a way that had not been done previously. And so between these two things, is conservation education and access to outdoor recreation, we really kind of lean pretty heavily on our New Deal roots. However, we have expanded since then to include 56 different parks that cover pretty much every era of the state's history. So we've got things talking about everything from the French and Indian War. We have sites talking about the American Civil War, the War for Independence, as well as World War I, and some sites even doing some interpretation on World War II. And also, we talked a little bit about, you might talk about it a little bit later, T.O. Fuller and Booker T. Washington are two parks that we actually had in our system that were initially, when they came in, were segregated parks. And one kind of really cool thing about them as a resource is most of the parks that were segregated, actually, after segregation ended, most of those parks wound up either kind of going away or their management changed, and they became part of parks that had been operating them as satellites. But T.O. Fuller and Booker T. Washington are one of the kind of the exceptions in that they are still kind of in their original configurations from the segregated era, and so they're actually a really good place to talk about segregation as well. So there's a good resource with there as well. But I didn't want to like belabor too much. I could probably go on for a long, long time on the history of Tennessee State Parks. I wanted to make sure that I got to Eric so that he could talk to you about the really cool things they've got going on at Fort Loudoun State Historic Area, so that they can talk to your class about the French and Indian War and its impact on the state of Tennessee. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric. Let me see if I can find, there we go.
Okay, there you go. Now I can hit that button. My computer is shut down here, so I'm on the laptop, so forgive me. I'm trying to resort things here. I was telling everybody at the beginning we're in the middle of a thunderstorm, and thankfully I had the laptop set up differently, so we're a little better there. All right, so at Fort Loudoun, at Fort Loudoun we have can everybody see the virtual field trips up there? All right. So at Fort Loudoun, we do a lot with Skype in the classroom. So if you guys are familiar with using Skype in the classroom in your classroom setting, I think we'll probably see a lot more of that this year, just with you guys being forced not to be able to do field trips with all the social distancing and all the craziness that's going on. I expect our Skype in the classroom program to really explode. But last year we did over 100 Skype in the classrooms, both locally and well, not locally as much as in the state and internationally. So one of the things, oh, come on, slideshow. So, you know, the Tennessee State Parks we have that are going to deal with this early past for you is Fort Loudoun's the primary one as far as right now dealing with doing the interaction on Skype. I know that David Crockett Birthplace has talked about doing it. I don't think Red Clay is currently doing anything that way. And I know Sycamore Shoals isn't. However, I know Alvin C. York is putting together a program, and so is a couple of the other parks. But right now, we're currently the only ones doing it with any regularity. So, you know, with Skype in the classroom, we're doing the French and Indian War, which, depending on what age group you have, of course, we're doing it mostly for 3rd grade, 4th grade, a little bit into 5th grade, and every once in a blue moon, 8th grade. The class I had today actually was 8th grade out of West Tennessee, but mostly we're hitting 4th graders as a whole. We do the same program for you within parameters of time that you would get if you came here to the fort. So what you're going to see from us is we're set up so that we can actually do a tour of the fort on Skype. It won't be like you see me right now where I'm sitting in my office thanks to the thunderstorm. I'll actually be in the fort, or one of my rangers will be in the fort dressed out in the interpretive clothes, which I think Hobart put this slideshow together for me, but I'm pretty sure we have some pictures of, we'll come back to that. Oh, one too far. So there's me doing a program several years ago, but we do the program in the fort on the iPad. We can now, with the internet technology we have available to us, we're able to go through most of the buildings in the fort if you want anything specifically, everything but the powder magazine. We can't really do anything there because it's a stone building and you step inside and it's over. So, but most of the other buildings, even out into the Cherokee town, the 2 buildings we have outside the fort, we shoot the musket, we talk about the uniform, we discuss the French and Indian War, just varies on the depth of what you're interested in. When you go back to set up program with us, that's really, go back to this first. The teachers that are there, anybody use Skype in the classroom? Any of you using Skype in the classroom yet? Yes, no, maybe. No? Okay. Well, it's pretty easy. You just go to the Skype. All you do is look up Skype in the classroom, the website, which I think, Hobart, did we share this so they can get that link afterwards?
We can make it available, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll give you the link, but it's pretty easy. It's through Microsoft now, not just through Skype Direct. You go to that website, you log in, put your information in there for your class. They'll give you a ID number or a specific number just like you use with Skype normally. And after you're done that, you just email us through the Skype in the classroom. So once you're in there, it'll show you all the different programs that offer Skype in the Classroom. You can look us up by Fort Loudoun directly. You see there is our link right in the middle of that page. You pull us up. Once you pull us up, it gives you specific information about the type of programs we're offering. If you're interested, with us at least, in something outside of what you see there, but that still relates to, especially for us, French and Indian War or the War of 1812 period, because we do have the blockhouse as well we're doing programs for. We're willing to work with you. And once you pull that up, it simply sets you up to email us. You request the virtual field trip and it'll send you through links. There's not really a lot to it. You put in specifically what you're looking for. The more detail you give us about what you're looking for your class, like if you want us to hit a certain topic, if you just want the general program, which is really less specific. We talk a lot about the soldiers at the fort, and we talk some about the Cherokee, and we talk about some about the French and Indian War. That's our common program, and it's set up the same way. And everything's done through the email back and forth with you. And then on the day of the program, you simply have to dial us up on your laptop or whatever media you have there in your classroom, and we interact with you in your class. Now, I know in this age of we don't want anybody to see anybody or know what children are in the classroom, sometimes the teacher shows us the class, sometimes the teacher doesn't show us the class, sometimes she only shows us, or he shows us like the side of the class, which makes for an interesting program. That's totally up to you. We're there to be seen and to talk. We answer questions. It's an interactive program, so it's not just, I mean, if you wanted a video, we could post lots of videos, but those aren't near as interactive from your standpoint. So it allows you as the teacher or the students or both to ask questions of us. So there's not a lot to belabor there. It is the same. I mean, it's an interactive program on the French and Indian War on Fort Loudoun, which of course does fall into your curriculum if you've got, I think now we're in the 3rd, 4th, and 8th, depending on where you fall into those. And I know we picked up a few 5th graders because I think Colonial falls into that a little bit. I'm having trouble keeping up with them since you guys changed them around. It's thrown off my memory of what's where. But I think that's pretty much it from my standpoint. Is there anything else you wanted me to touch on, Hobart?
No, I think that's good. If we're ready, we can turn it over to Rachel to talk about what they got going at Crockett.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Lee, and I'm the park manager at David Crockett State Park. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to get out of Eric's screen.
Eric, you'll have to stop.
Ah. All right. So we have done some videos. We've not done Skype in the classroom yet. We've talked about it a couple of times. But when COVID started and school here got dismissed in in March, actually, we decided, where did it go? We decided to try to do some virtual field trip ideas, things like that. My video disappeared. Hold on. And we did like easy things we would find out on the trail, nature, just live posting some video postings. And we were trying to just encourage and interact. We did a lot of bird feeder observations. So I know that's not history, but those are some of the things we looked at. And we did, here we go. We did a museum tour and a Trail of Tears hike. And so those were some of the things that got a lot of results. This is the start of the museum tour. Unmute it. So we have the David Crockett Museum. David Crockett lived here between 1817 and 1821, and where the park is, he had a grist mill, powder mill, and distillery. And this is also the beginnings of his political career. So he was elected colonel of the militia, he was a county commissioner, and then he would be elected as state representative from this area at first. So in the spring.
Hello everyone, Ranger Rachel. I'd like to welcome you to Crockett Museum, and we want to take you today on a museum tour. So we like to start here at the beginning to kind of separate the man from the myth as far as Davy Crockett goes. We start here with this giant picture of Davy.
So that's just kind of the start of what we had going with the museum tour. You're welcome to watch it. It is on our park YouTube channel called it's under David Crockett State Park and the Roman Rangers. And so you can look that up. It's also on our park Facebook page, or a couple of ways that we shared that. We did a hike on the end of the Trail of Tears to talk about the impact and what the Cherokees were seeing as they came through this area and to make those connections. And we reached out with the teachers. I have a great run club coach who actually is also a 4th and 5th grade teacher here at one of our local schools. So he helped us out and his wife, and we were able to get out and do some programs with them. So what we would be available to do if we're not doing Skype would be to offer these video links to your classroom and schedule a time when we gave you that link for an interactive part of that field trip. So a 20-minute question and answer time where we would set that time up. The kids would have already watched the video with you in the class. And then we would set up and have this interactive Zoom meeting just like this where the kids could ask questions and we could answer those questions. Depending on where we are in the park and what our internet accessibility is, we can do those on site or we can do them just like this in an office. The Trail of Tears we could actually do on the trail as well as, so the museum is hit or miss. It's down in a hole, so it doesn't always do that. But besides the museum tour, the Trail of Tears, things like a black powder demonstration, so firing a flintlock musket like Crockett would have used and talking about the mechanisms of that and the history of it. A grist mill demonstration, we have a replica grist mill here, so we could actually grind some cornmeal and talk about the process, let them see what that does, and then actually stop and talk about all the steps and the parts of the grist mill. Then there would be ways to bring it to life in the classroom, something those kids are missing from that tangible experience by not being at the park or being out in the element, would be a list of things that the teacher could have or that we could send them beforehand, or that they tell them a place to go purchase, like a musket ball. If you're going to do a black powder demonstration, something they could pass around, spray it with Lysol every time after somebody touches it. But and then or cornmeal, actually, you know, giving them a little Ziploc bag of cornmeal so they can touch that item to know this is, you know, this is corn and this is cornmeal and this is where this comes from and this is the process. So those tangible items to bring it to life. We can teach them how to churn butter in the classroom. So, and make their own butter there to have with their cornbread if we could figure out how to have cornbread. But a list of those we could make available to those teachers as well. And then prompt questions. So when we sent that link out to the teachers and set up that date for that question answer time, we could send out a list of prompt questions, things to help those teachers pull that information, pull those questions out of those kids that they could share with us then at the actual virtual field trip. Great, I'm gonna stop sharing. Something keeps blinking, I don't know what it is. But I think, is there anything else you needed me to touch on, Hobart?
No, that's it. If you have like an email address that you can just share, we'll share that with them, and they can share as well.
Okay.
All right, Sarah.
All right, see if I can push all the right buttons. So just want to say hello. My name is Sarah Green, and I serve as the education specialist for Tennessee State Parks. So Eric and Rachel are the superstars, and I just get to brag about all the great things they do. It's the best job I've ever had. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And because I love maps, I'm going to start with maps. Just wanted to give a quick glance at kind of the location of our 56 parks. All of our parks, each individual park has a unique story. But it's really important to mention that while some of our parks are designated kind of natural or historic, all of our parks have a story of a place, a people, and a time. And so parks are a wonderful cross-curricular resource for teachers. And I get to make sure to share that information when I can. So I wanted to share all of that with people, but me walking around the state saying it one person at a time wasn't quite cutting it. So I'd like to share with you about our park educator guides. So if you're anything like I was as a teacher, you either know everything that parks have to offer or you know nothing. And I knew nothing. So I get to share that in these educator guides. So right now these guides are in creation mode. I have a goal of 25 parks that I'm working on this year. We've got several that are already public, and so hopefully we'll meet that 25 goal by December, and then we'll continue on next year sharing these. Right now they're in, the ones that have been completed are a lot of CCC parks, and they are housed at the park in digital copies that you can contact the park for, and they can just email you a copy of it. Eventually, we're hoping very, very quickly, we're going to get these up on our TennesseeStateParks.com website. So just keep an eye out for that. I wanted to go over Norris Dam as a CCC option. So we've got just a little table of contents, a little bit about what makes this park unique, what we offer, field trips, rangers coming to the school, and then this wonderful 2020 custom program option. We include a map because when you're on a bus with 4 classes of 4th graders and you're pretty much just focused on where does the bus park and how close is the bathroom. So we include that and all of our information of how the day could go, reservation steps, who to contact at the park, and then a little something special I do want to point out for our special circumstances, because this year, like we know, field trips and guest speakers in the classroom are most likely just not going to be a thing. But we are really flexible, and I'm always I'm always impressed with the skill and knowledge of our rangers and their willingness to be innovative. So like Rachel said, we do have videos, Q&A sessions for live sessions. We're looking at some pretty interesting options for virtual field trips as well as the Skype in the classroom. So then we get to kind of the meat and potatoes of our document. We've got our Norris Dam State Park Meet the Ranger program, as well as their Creek Critter Crawl. A lot of alliteration. And what I really like about this is it gives you kind of the breakdown of what the program is, and is there a cost, how long is it going to take, and then how it directly correlates with the standards. Most of our standards seem to be falling between 2nd grade and 8th grade, but because our rangers are so amazing, modifications are easy to do. So just like I said, there are natural and historic elements in all of our parks. We've got our snakes and owls, as well as our fantastic CCC opportunities. And then our partnership with Lenore Museum at Norris Dam. So right now we're starting small, 5 or 6 programs for each park. But I do want to point out that this is just a little bit of what is offered. And so it gives a teacher something to kind of grasp onto, and then maybe it gives you some options, and you can think of special requests that you'd like to give. So this is an example of David Crockett State Park. So Rachel, I'm not even sure if you checked your email today and you've been able to see it, but we just put the finishing touches on today. And of course, like all the parks, they do have a Meet a Ranger program. And just like she talked about this museum tour, it says here park only, because prior to all of this was a park only option. But we know that there's a video now, and this gives us the opportunity to say, hey, I really like this animal tracks program, or this birds of prey program, or this black powder demonstration. Can we make it a virtual option? So I just wanted to point out that these programs do all correlate with standards, and we want them to be a resource to you. So let me come out of here and show one last resource before I head out. This is our Tennessee State Parks Interpretation YouTube page. We've got it designated by playlists, some helpful history, regional history with all 3 regions. It's a great place to go and explore explore what's already available. And it's being updated all the time. So you see here, this was updated yesterday. Tuesday is the Centennial of Suffrage, and it's constantly updated on this website. All right, so the last thing I did want to mention was that I do want to be available. So I'm going to put my information in the chat box. And if there's anything that you need, if you want to get connected to a park, but you're not quite sure which park to get connected to, or having some trouble making that connection, I'm here and excited to help you get connected. And that's all I have.
All right, well, thank you again for all of our wonderful partners at Tennessee State Parks who took time out of their days to be with all of us and talk about the resources that are available there, which I think is a wonderful accompaniment, especially bringing in all those multidisciplinary standards to the things that we did in this newsletter, which yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the newsletter very briefly, and I'm just going to show you a few resources, and then Layla's going to show you a few resources. And if you have any questions about any of it, of course, drop it in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we address that before we leave today. So I'm going to go back to a share screen mode, and which will take us, voila, here we are again at the newsletter. And so basically I just wanted to, well, I wanted to say that this was a lot of fun to do, but it's also challenging because finding primary sources dealing specifically with Tennessee State Parks, it's hard to do on the Library of Congress website. You know, they're great for the national parks for a lot of obvious reasons, but they have fewer resources that speak directly to the state parks in Tennessee. So we had to get a little bit creative. Some of them are from the Library of Congress and some of them from other places, as Layla and I are going to show you. But of course, as I mentioned before, the Norris Dam image, and if you want to talk more about what the CCC is when you're going to these places virtually or in person and seeing the infrastructure with your students, then I can show you some place on the Library of Congress right now, which is what I'm going to do. The images that talk about the CCC, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps, one of the first, if not the first, New Deal programs implemented by FDR in 1933. The CCC employed a lot of young men, and they did it on a local basis too. So thousands of young men in Tennessee that were experiencing unemployment during the Great Depression could enlist in the CCC for 6 months periods of time. Some of them even worked longer. And this was open to white Tennessee males as well as African-American ones, but they were in segregated units. And they disbanded sometime in the early 40s, but they left an incredible legacy for the short amount of time that they were in existence. So if you go to digital collections, you get to this page, and a lot of you are going to be very familiar with the collection I'm going to show you because it's one of the most famous and well-known ones at the library, the Farm Security Administration Office of War Information photograph collection. In other words, it's the one with Migrant Mother, as you can see. So just clicking there will take you to over 100,000 images. And this is where not only Great Depression and New Deal images are, but also a lot of the World War II mobilization and Rosie the Riveter type images as well. And of course, the TVA images are going to be in this collection as well. So a lot of the stuff that we can pull in when talking about the formation of state parks are going to be found in here. So for example, if I search Norris Dam, you can see there's a lot of different possibilities. Then you can see some of the amazing images associated with the construction of this dam in the 1930s and 40s, and lots of really great engineering works. But also you can get a sense that they created opportunities for recreation from the get-go, because they wanted this to be something for people to recreate themselves with, as Hobart mentioned earlier. And so I like these images of people doing stuff there for leisure and not just for you know, power and the war effort. And so but play around with your search terms, because you get some slightly different results when you search for something like Norris Lake. And I like these results as well. They're only 15 if you do this research, but because you can see some of the infrastructure that was created by the CCC. For example, this lodge in Norris Park. This is one of the great, let's see what agenda the person has who's writing this caption examples that you can find in this collection. But it's also got a lot of information that you can use here. And it's a really great way to talk about also pro-government propaganda. Not that that's bad, because obviously this is a government program, but also, you know, what kind of spin are they putting on the involvement of the CCC here? Talking about this lodge, and it says the lodge contains facilities for dining and dancing and has a beautiful view of the lake from the dining terrace. So that reads like a billboard. And then the park is developed in a rustic style native to the surrounding territory, principally because the CCC program, which needed such opportunities, could furnish only low-skilled labor and practically no materials, but those which could be procured by enrollees from local resources, such as timber and stone. And you're probably gonna have to put that in your own words for your students. Basically, is they were so, they didn't have a lot of funding, so they had to use the resources that were local, the stuff that was close to them. And these people did not have a lot of skills in building things because they did not come from that background. They were unemployed young men, and they were trying to give them skills so then they could go find a permanent job elsewhere. And so this was kind of like guinea pig construction for young unemployed men in Tennessee in the 1930s. But you know, then we have all these lasting wonderful structures, many of which are on the National Register nowadays. So, but also they had to use local materials, which is great because, you know, we talk a lot about locally sourced materials and food nowadays. They were doing this back then for budgetary reasons, but also it means that you get a lot of really great features and uniqueness to the infrastructure because it's not going to look the same from park to park. So that's just like a detail that I love that can sometimes pop up in one of these captions. All right, so that's all I'm going to say about that particular collection. There is one more very important collection that I want to show you. And this is the Tennessee Virtual Archive. Now, this is the place where Kira found all those wonderful images that she uses in the lesson idea on the T.O. Fuller State Park. So one way that you can go to this archive is to go to the lesson idea and click on any of these images that are part of the activity. Or you can just Google Tennessee Virtual Archive, and it's going to be called TEVA, the T-E-V-A instead of TVA to eliminate confusion there. That's the acronym it goes by. And so, for instance, if you search in here, T.O. Fuller State Park, you will get a wealth of amazing images that your students can look at that have people in them. Now, you will have to point out that these are from the 1960s, and so they're not from the actual period when the park was constructed. But the thing about parks is they're not just important in one era because they last for decades. So they adapt. They, of course, this one had to adapt. It was built during Jim Crow for Jim Crow reasons, and it had to change over time. So a lot of wonderful images where students can talk about recreational opportunities. They can talk about segregation. They can even talk about things like what people were wearing and you know, how it's different or the same from what they do today. And also the interesting thing about T.O. Fuller is that it's looking at a park in an urban context. So, you know, the city of Memphis, as opposed to one that's out in the middle of nowhere, like Fall Creek Falls. Both just, you know, amazing parks and resources, but for, you know, in very different ways. So here you can see right away CCC Work Camp, and that's from the 1930s. So lots of great materials for talking about that. And so I'm actually going to turn it over to Layla for a few minutes to talk about some more places where you can find really good primary sources related to this newsletter.
All right, hi guys. Sorry, I have a funky lighting situation going on, but I'm going to be sharing my screen, so you won't really be worried about that throughout. So I'm going to go ahead and share this for you. So I'm just going to start out here with our TPS August newsletter. So in this lesson idea, the one on T.O. Fuller State Park, we actually, oh, I'm sorry, not this one. Let me scroll down one. The one on state archaeological parks on Old Stone Fort and Pinson Mounds. We actually used the Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture for both of these. So I'm going to take you all to the Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture page. Just by using your reaction buttons, your thumbs up, have you used the Tennessee Encyclopedia with your students in your classrooms before? Just give me a thumbs up if you have. Awesome, I see a few thumbs up, great. So I'm glad you're using this resource. The Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture is a joint project of the Tennessee Historical Society and the University of Tennessee Press. This website is pretty easy to navigate. If you've used it before, I'm sure you're aware of that. Very easy to navigate and search for specific topics, events, or people. You can use it to search anything. The search bar is up at the top right. So I'm gonna move this over because I can't see my search bar. My Zoom screen's in the way. So when you're using this, like I said, it's easy for teachers to use, easy for students to use, and easy for people who are just looking for more information to use the search tools. So the Tennessee Encyclopedia contains over 1,500 entries. The online version has updates to existing entries, so everything's going to be up to date on the website. They have new entries, and they also have more than 500 additional images. So images you can use with your students or use in lesson plans. They also have audio and video files available as well. So it's designed to supply general information about the state of Tennessee, which is really important for our teachers, especially our 5th grade teachers and those teaching Tennessee specific history electives in high school. So very important for that. And it's user-friendly for students and teachers. So like I said, some of the sources we used in our August newsletter on state parks were found using the Tennessee Encyclopedia. The lesson idea on state archaeological parks featuring information on Old Stone Fort and Pinson Mounds included 2 articles from the Tennessee Encyclopedia. So I'm just going to show you guys really quickly how we found those articles and how you can generate a couple of new things in your search if you don't know already. So here's the search bar, and I'm just going to go ahead and type in Pinson Mounds. Oh, it's right there already. It doesn't usually do that. I've just typed this in before. So you type in Pinson Mounds. Perfect. All right, and you guys see it's generated a ton of information for me. This article right here is actually what we used in our newsletter activity. So you have this great article. It tells you how long it'll take you to read. So it's great for students. You can chunk it if you need to. And it gives you a lot of information on Pinson Mounds. And you see, you can take it and use what you need like you would any lesson plan. It has an article title, a URL if you want to come back to it. And it also has your access date if you need to cite it and the published date and the last update as well. So those are all great at the bottom. A lot of great information for your students if you're working on citing as well. They also have pieces over here on the right-hand side of the screen, categories that might be relevant to your search, as well as related entries. So you can see we have a little bit over here if you want to continue to go down the rabbit hole in searching for Pinson Mound State Archaeological Park. So like I said, this search is going to generate other relevant articles as well. So if I go back to our initial search, you'll see we have all of these other articles and information that popped up that's relevant to Pinson Mounds. So your students could just keep going and have a lot of fun with this, or if you're planning a lesson plan and you really want to go more in depth about the background information, sometimes we find ourselves just going deeper and deeper until it's too late, we've gone too far. So a lot of great information here. On Pinson Mounds, we could just keep going. The other piece we used in that lesson idea in the newsletter is going to be on Old Stone Fort. So I'm just going to go ahead and type that in at the search bar once again. And right here we see our article that we used in our newsletter. So just like Pinson Mounds, same thing, a great article, tells you how long it's going to take you to read it probably. You can print this very easily. Has your categories, related entries, and all of the information that you and your students might need at the bottom of the page. All right, so the other website I want to show you guys very quickly. In our newsletter, we also put a lot of information from the Tennessee State Library and Archives. They are great, very useful, very helpful when you're looking for resources. So I wanted to share with you all the online exhibition option. This is where we found the Disasters in Tennessee exhibition that we used for the New Madrid earthquakes and Reelfoot Lake lesson activity. So TSLA provides teachers with so many options for research resources and great information pieces within the online exhibitions. The Disasters in Tennessee online exhibition includes many other events and disasters beyond just the New Madrid earthquake. So I want to show you guys that. So here's this online exhibition, Disasters in Tennessee, that we used. And you see they have a list all at the top: epidemics, New Madrid, weather, riots, fires, a ton of different disasters that happen in Tennessee that you can use to teach your students. And they're all going to be aligned to some type of Tennessee state standard. So the New Madrid one that we used in our newsletter idea, or lesson idea, excuse me, has a map. It has different images of Reelfoot Lake throughout the years, and it also has it connected to Tecumseh and his prophecy, which is a big deal, I think, for 8th grade teachers when you're teaching the War of 1812. So a lot of different pieces in here that can connect to different standards. Images are going to be hyperlinks. You can click right on them and it'll take you to it. They also will be hyperlinked to, well, I thought they would be. These images are hyperlinks. You can open that, and there will be information there as well that you can go to and find more of the textual information. So lots of online exhibitions. I also wanted to show you guys, because our newsletter ideas on state parks, just really quickly, an online exhibition that's titled Tennessee Outdoors, Parks, Conservation, and Wildlife Exhibition. So let me find that one for you right here on your online exhibition. This exhibition offers photos, information, and other resources that are student-friendly, good for teachers as well, that you can click through: pictures, chunked articles, everything's hyperlinked. You can go and use this when teaching you about Tennessee state parks as well. So all of this information is going to be on our Padlet right here. I'm sure you guys have visited our Padlet before. I've included on the Padlet a links guide for these resources that has a link for the Tennessee Encyclopedia, the Tennessee State Library and Archives virtual exhibits, the Tennessee virtual or electronic virtual archive, and the Tennessee State Parks blogs page. So this is all on our Padlet, and you can go through and click on these hyperlink sites and research for yourself whenever you have time. I know that's something you might not have as we're moving into a new school year. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah.
All right, hello everyone. I wanted to share my screen one more time. So we were looking at the Tennessee State Parks Interpretation YouTube page, but I did want to highlight the Tennessee State Parks YouTube page. And we're going to spend just a minute and 7 seconds to take a moment to kind of digest all the information that we've had and enjoy a moment in nature out of Warrior's Path. So I hope you enjoyed that little moment from Warrior's Path. We've got a few on the website, and we do know that several, they're going to keep playing even though I turned it off. There we go. That several of our parks post things like that all the time on their Facebook pages and their YouTube pages. So they're nice to have for you to kind of take a moment, and for the students to take a moment, because it's a time to take a moment. So thank you for letting me share that.
So if I unmute myself. So thank you, Sarah. So as we get ready to wrap up here, I just want to remind you guys, we've mentioned a couple different times the Padlet. Again, there is the link for that. And we're going to be adding a few other things to it based on things shown today in our conversation. Also, the guides that Sarah was referencing earlier, we'll get those shared there as well. I know people had questions about how to find those, so we'll get those up on that Padlet page for you guys so that you can find and access those. Again, thank you guys. We do ask if you would to complete our survey. It really helps us to hear kind of your thoughts about today's webinar. It helps us as we think about the types of programming we're going to be doing during the school year. And one thing that we would like to hear is what time you guys would like to have programming made available to you. We know there's a lot of challenges around the school year, and so we want to figure out kind of get timing the things that are going to work for teachers and for all of our educators this year. So again, feel free to fill out that survey. We will get participation certificates sent out within the next day or so. And for those of you who may be watching this later on YouTube, once you fill out that once I fill out the form, the certificate will be sent to you usually in about 48 hours or so. Again, thank you guys. And next month we will be back and we're going to be talking about fads in history. So we will be sending out dates and information about how to register for that, but that'll be fads in history. And again, it will be the second Thursday in the month. All right, thank you guys, and we will look forward to seeing you next month.